Right, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Biofiles with myself, Edward, Dids, and Jack. And this is a podcast where we take you through some interesting or relevant bio-based stories, and we kind of just have a chat about them, and hope you enjoy listening as we do. So this week is the I forgot what I was going to say last time, but I was going to say half of 10, 5. What is 10? Deca. Is there like a good word for 10?
10 is tin.
Tin. What's 5?
Wood.
Wood. Well, this is our wouldn't anniversary. the fifth episode. And this is a special episode where we're going to be taking you through cephalopods, because they are such interesting creatures which we've been wanting to talk about since the podcast has begun and beforehand. And today we are going to go through some of what we think are the most interesting bits. So, Dids, I realised that I usually pick on you to go first. So this week, Dids, do you want to go first?
Nice. Yeah, why not? So I've chosen a complicated topic, which I didn't anticipate it being so complicated. I should have known, because they're such intricate creatures. But I'm talking about the blue-ringed octopus and how he shows his blue rings, because contrary to popular belief, he's not always blue or ringed. He kind of cuts about plain, bland, I think, in whatever colour he likes. He can do his camouflage patterns like a lot of octopuses can. It's quite a common trait, and it's one of the most impressive. I was going to go on to one of those, but I thought it'd be too complicated. I looked at one of the papers, and it's just like, it's loads. You know, they can fun little fact, little stop code on straight away. They can taste with their suckers, so all 8 arms can taste whatever they're touching.
What does it look like? So I off the top of my head, I don't know what it looks like.
Can I share my screen?
Well, no. So I have searched it myself, but for the people who aren't on this, who are listening to this podcast, who aren't able to see a shared screen, do you want to take us through it?
Got some blue rings.
I'm not an excellent descriptor.
Because in my head, I was initially thinking of just like one blue ring around an octopus, but it's rings
around an
plural,
octopus, like a halo. It's effectively spotted, and the spots are intricately. They have lots of intricate details on the spots because of reasons I'll go into in a minute. But they have what's it called? Concentric circles, and the outer one is dark, is like brown pigmented, depending on what blue ringed octopus there is, because I think it's like a subset, so they all look somewhat different and different colours. Also different shades. They've got like a darker background, and then they have like a blue, a really iridescent blue. It's quite nice, actually, quite intriguing. And then it gets lighter again, another concentric lighter circle, and then it's another black background, or like a dark background, to really bring out the contrast. So it's quite obvious that that's a blue ringed octopus. And conveniently, when they feel scared or threatened, that's when they'll turn on their flash. They'll flash it at you, and kind of. And what's really cool is that they can make it blue, like on one side, and then they can make it less obvious on the other side of their body. So they say that they've got like half of it is showing a warning signal, and the other side isn't, because the way that they show these blue rings is all under neural control. So it's not like they're always blue, or that they're randomly blue, or that when there's a fight or flight emotion, like a physiological emotion, that it goes. They do it deliberately to flash, and they have almost autonomous. I'm pretty sure they have autonomous control over each one, which is crazy, because imagine the brain power to do that. I think it's difficult.
It's difficult. Yeah, each of these kind of neurons, aren't there quite a few per kind of light emitting cell? Is it multiple per cell, or is it multiple per like cluster of cells, sorts of thing? Which is, I don't know, it's kind of like just tensing a muscle, and how you can kind of choose to either like move one of your fingers on your hand to clench your fist, or clench just one finger, sort of thing. It's that much control over it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even more, really, because they've got layers and layers of skin to move, and like cells to move. So it's not, they don't actually light up. It's not fluorescent at all. They don't emit. So in the dark they won't glow, or this one won't glow. You know what? I don't actually know. Are there any octopuses that glow, that are luminous? That would be really cool. I don't think there are.
I don't think there are.
There might be some squids. I don't know about octopuses.
Yeah, well, if there's any octopuses listening, if you guys want to tailor your evolution to light up, that would be sick.
Just give us a few likes on Spotify and
Write into us at.
Yeah, so like they don't actually light up. They basically reflect light, but what's nuts is that they control the wavelength of light that goes out to produce a color on that pigment.
it's incredibly crazy, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
incredibly complex, and it's one of these things where you think, how on earth has this led to evolve? It's so phenomenal. Well, I don't know. You can think about this with a lot of things in biology. Like when you start looking into how things actually work, you do wonder, how on earth have we got to where we are? And that's just as humans. Like when you look at all the other animals out there as well, and things like octopuses and how they light up, you think that is just, it's so clever. It's like so simple, but clever.
But
Like, do you want to kind of take through how they do kind of light up and are able to emit these sorts of things? Because there are a couple of different cell types which are involved with it, aren't there?
yeah, well, yeah. So they've got like chromatophores, which, correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, are chemically speaking, that's a chemical that can absorb energy or light, and then it emits a color or a wavelength of that light, or it reflects a wavelength in that color. So blue, if it shows up blue, the chromatophore will release a wavelength of light which is specific to blue. I'm not sure what that is.
Well, it would absorb all colours but blue, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it would reflect the blue. And then there's also this iridophore, which I'm not really too sure what the difference is. It was something to do with on my little notes that I had.
I think I came across that as well. I think the iridophores are the ones that give it the like metallic, shiny color, as
Yeah,
opposed to like
the oil
normal
slick, isn't it?
octopus color. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the ones which make it more iridescent. And is it also the iridophores that control the wavelength of light? Not control the wavelength of light, but control the.
Polarity.
I'm trying to think. So when I was reading about it, there are three different chromatophores. One of which is like brown. I think it's purple, and then another color. And then with the iridophores, that then is able to kind of make those colors look different depending
Yeah.
on what wavelength of light is let in.
Yeah.
And I've also got my notes leucophores, but I haven't put anything about.
I was going to say it's a lusophore. We can vibe with that. We can vibe with Luco and Luso. I understood the luciphores are the whiter ones, and they do like more of a pale color. So most of the time, an octopus is kind of, well, I think his normal state is pale, creamy color. You know, when an octopus dies, it kind of goes to that almost see-through white color rather than all these blue or like really light, colorful shades. It's not like that anymore. It's kind of, they look lifeless. They look plain. I think that's the lucifores. I think that's the resting state. The lucifores are out.
Okay.
I think. It's really complicated. There's so many different ones, and my research said that they're layered. So as you said, the iridophore controls kind of what color it is, or what color it shows up as. But the chromophore or the chromatophore, I suppose, would be, maybe it's the whole thing, or maybe the chromatophore.
So I think isn't the chromatophore at the base?
Yeah.
Of the like kind of the layers.
Yeah.
And you've got the either leucophore and or iridophore above that. And by changing the like kind of contractions with the neurons which are going into it, you can kind of change how the iridophores, like the shape of the iridophore, which can then alter the light coming in and therefore the light coming out, which is reflected by the chromatophore.
Yeah. I think that's,
as well as getting the metallic kind of sheen to it.
Well, I think it's an option. I think that's one of the options, because when these blue-ringed octopus show up, they can be really vibrant blues, or the same octopus in that same ring can be like a darker blue or less shiny. It can just be like a not. I don't think we can move through the shades of blue, but I think we can move through how vibrant it is, and I think that's controlled by the iridophores and the lucifores. I think. I mean, there's just so many layers. There's so many things. I was just going to go through the really simple way of how they flash, and that is like a muscle contraction around the skin pouch, which surrounds these. I'm just going to call them chromatophores as the general. I'm going to refer to it as a general name, because got in the paper that I was reading that they talk about the chromatophores being under neural control, and that would make sense. The chromatophore is the whole object, and it's all controlled, somewhat like that way. And yeah, it's normally at resting state. It's surrounded by by the skin pouch, so there's no light coming in or out. So it's not showing a circle, and then the muscles will contract. So it's an active process, and that skin pouch will open, and then it opens, and the light can come in, so that then the light can be reflected back out. It can control and filter the way it goes, and I think it polarizes the light as well. Which is a really interesting thing because they're talking about the visual communication and how they emit or how they reflect this light changes at different water depths. So I think it's longer wavelengths of light don't transmit as well through deeper water. I presume that's because it gets stuck at the surface because it can't penetrate as far. Because obviously all the light will come from the sun. But the point is that they can change it. They can change the way that they reflect the light and the mechanism by which they reflect the lights at different water depths. So they're aware of how deep they are.
To achieve the same goals, like they
Communication.
can still have the concentric fluorescent blue rings at deeper depths by kind of altering the wavelengths coming in.
Yeah.
Just regardless of the wavelength.
To communicate, yeah. So at the start I said it's like a warning. It's like when they're either scared. Not typically animals respond because they're scared, and they'll be showing out a warning. They feel threatened, so they give out a warning. And this is their version of a warning. They flash their blue rings because in nature those vibrant colours indicate something being poisonous. And quite conveniently, these animals are poisonous. So
all octopuses are poisonous.
No.
Yeah.
Wait, all of them?
They are. Yeah, all octopuses are poisonous.
Oh, really?
I didn't realise. Yes, they've got poison in their saliva, so that kind of when they kind of prey or feed on their prey, it paralyzes them briefly, and that can be. There's one octopus which has enough poison to kind of kill a human in a bite.
Do you know what that octopus's name is? It's the blue-ringed octopus.
No, it's not really.
Yeah.
No way.
The blue-ringed octopus has enough poison to kill a human.
Wow.
And it's crazy because they're tiny.
In my notes, I just put "look into this more." So I'm glad that you have.
Yeah.
This did it for you.
Yeah. So is that in one bite has enough? Enough.
It's difficult because these reporters make like these sweeping suggestions or sweeping statements that when I looked into the distribution of poison in this octopus, they found that it had the poison is tetrodotoxin, and tetrodotoxin might sound familiar because if you like sushi or like just fish, can you edit that out? Because that sounds so stupid. If you like sushi, tetrodotoxin is something you probably would have come across if you like pufferfish, or if you're intrigued to try a 5,000-pound meal of pufferfish, because pufferfish, the poison in them is tetrodotoxin, and they can only be eaten if they're prepared in a certain way, which I think removes the tetrodotoxin or maybe makes it less biologically inactive so that you can eat it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think it's only in certain organs of the fish that have the poison. So as long as they're very, very careful about removing them, then you're right.
Well,
is that what dolphins use? Because have you heard that dolphins play with pufferfish to kind of hallucinate a bit? So is that through the tetrodotoxin, or is there another?
I think so.
Hallucinogen in
there.
Yeah,
I think they're immune to it, or they have some sort of resistance to it. Or maybe it's something to do with the mix of chemicals that are released. It's not, maybe they're completely immune to the tetrodotoxin. There's like a vehicle that is secreted to help with absorption. They get high on that, maybe. I don't know. But tetrodotoxin...
Or they're the dolphins of Silicon Valley, and they're actually just microdosing to make sure.
Yeah, they learn how to talk. They're continuing that. Anyway, the point I was trying to get to is that it's difficult to say where this tetrodotoxin is, whether it's all in one bite could kill a human, because there's a study that they did to find out where the tetrodotoxin is located in the body of the blue-ringed octopus, and it's actually all over. It's in higher concentrations in the saliva because that's where it's going to deliver it most of the time. But they found, I read this one quite a while ago, found like 8% in one of the tentacle tips. So it's all over it. And I'm not sure whether they could, if anyone's had a look, whether they could administer tetrodotoxin through their tentacles or whether it's just through a bite. I think it's just through a bite. I could be wrong.
But if it's in the tip of the tentacle, then if it's an open, it depends how the toxin works. If it doesn't need to have an open wound, then surely that would be enough.
Well, the toxin is let me get this right, is a sodium channel blocking neurotoxin. So,
that should work on the skin then.
Well, it depends how it's absorbed. It depends what vehicle it's in to get through the skin. If it has to be, it would have to be like a hydrophobic thing, and I don't know how easily that would absorb to fish in water. That's not what word I was trying to look for there. But yeah, the way the tetrodotoxin works is it causes like a dose-dependent muscle paralysis. So if you were to be poisoned with tetrodotoxin, you would effectively suffocate because your respiratory muscles would stop working. In a lethal dose, I'm pretty sure the way you would die isn't through like mad toxicity and you burn up and die like that. It's because it stops your respiratory muscles from functioning properly, so you can't breathe, and then you die. Or it would stop your heart beating because it can't. Because sodium, potassium pumps are involved in muscle contractions, aren't they? And also neuronal stimulus, neuronal transport. So it's sodium, potassium, isn't it? Concentration gradients.
Is it blocking them at the synapse? So would it be the synaptic kind of cleft is blocked?
I didn't look into mechanisms because I knew that would be quite a big one, but it could do anything.
That sounds quite similar to Botox as well, because I know that Botox kind of like puts your the botulinum toxin. That puts your muscles into paralysis because it just prevents contractions from occurring anymore. We shall move on to my one. I was thinking in my head we'll try and keep them to 15-minute segments because it'll make it a lot easier to edit. But as ever, I just get so carried away. They're so interesting what we talk about. You kind of don't want it to stop. But we do have to at some point. So I shall discuss mine. This week I decided to read up on how octopuses sleep, as there's a study which came out in the past year. I think it might have been 22, potentially 23, which was studying the ways that octopus sleep. What's the plural of octopus? Because you can use anything. Octopi.
I've only seen octopuses.
Octopuses, yeah. It's something to do with Latin versus Greek. I think, because it's Greek.
As we always go into, it is Greek, and it just stands for head, foot. Is that right?
Yeah, because they're a mollusk. Yeah.
Yeah, cephalopod stands for head, foot, because they basically just have a head and a foot.
Yeah.
Well, their head and their legs. Which, actually, we should... the Greeks were wrong. Idiots. Bloody idiots. Because it's not a head. It's not a head at all. It's a mantle, which gives us no indication of what that actually means. But what a mantle is a kind of no. It's a sack which they hold their organs in. It's like you'll find their organs in there. Their hearts and. I don't think of what organs they'd have. Yeah, the stomach. I don't think they have a pancreas.
But they have
I'm not sure if
several
they'd have a liver. They do have, 3? Is it 2 or 3?
They have 3. They can survive.
I was thinking 3 or 4, yeah.
The lobed heart, which I think if we don't talk about today, it will definitely have to be something of the next episode. And that's the thing with octopuses. There's so much to talk about. It's just going to have to be a feature.
Number 10.
But yeah, number 10. So previously on cephalopods, cuttlefish have been found to have kind of sleep cycles, and octopuses hadn't really so much before this paper. Octopuses have been observed to sleep, but kind of how they sleep, this study was looking a bit further into. We all know that with humans, we have REM, which is the deep sleep, and then you have some light sleep. And during this REM sleep is when kind of we consolidate our thoughts, and it's a time of which I think it's during REM where our body kind of detoxifies, so kind of gets rid of toxins and kind of the baddies in your blood and your lymphatic system, kind of breaks them down so that we're kind of fresher as beings, because during the day you're putting a lot of metabolic strain on your body by just doing exercising, just breathing and stuff, that it needs a time to be able to clear these out of the body. So the question was, can octopuses undergo REM sleep as well? And this study kind of it caught, I think, 3 or 4 octopuses from the sea, and then just kind of observed them and filmed them as they were sleeping. And they're able to find that there were different sorts of sleep which the octopuses had. So they kind of had one where they were just kind of chilling with their eyes open, and I think they couldn't really tell if it was active or if they were alert initially or asleep with their eyes open, and I say pupils open. And there's another state where the pupils were closed. But then the cool states which they had was one where one eye was just kind of moving around and looked like it was looking at stuff, which is almost indicative of like single-eyed REM sleep, because during humans' REM sleep, your eyes can flick back and forth behind your eyes, which is why it's called REM. It's rapid eye movement. But then the really cool ones were, there was a state in which the octopuses which they were studying, and I should say they were studying not the common octopus, Octopus vulgaris, but they were studying the Octopus insularis. And half of its body would go dark and kind of change colour from the other half of its body. And then suddenly the other half of the body would then go dark while the other half goes light. And it's almost like a perfect symmetrical line down the middle of their body, which looked really cool. And the other one was kind of their most active state of sleeping, which was, I say most active, but they weren't active, where the colours were changing rapidly as well as the textures. And it's something we didn't really touch on your area, Dids, but with their different cells and cell types which they have to control their camouflage, they can also control the texture. So they can make their pili in their skin. So the pili are kind of these little how do you describe a pili? It's like a little projection of cells. So projection of a cell, a cell projection. They're able to modify these to look like their surroundings as well. So that's why you might see a picture of a octopus disguised as a coral reef, because it's able to change these pili to look like coral reefs. And so these were going crazy and changing all these textures. The color was switching kind of on and off, and their eyes were going a bit mad as well. So kind of like REM sleep. Just witnessing these sleep states wasn't enough to say they're undergoing REM sleep, because that could just be like they're awake and just kind of trying out some different things, or it could be that they are actually asleep and this is them undergoing potentially a REM cycle. And in humans, we go through something called an ultradian rhythm, which is you go between this deeper sleep, the REM, and the lighter sleep, where you might have seen the graphs before, because I think sleep's getting a bit more in the mainstream, kind of with switching between these two phases. And like REM's when you're sleeping, and then you go into your lighter sleep where you're not sleeping so much, you're just kind of almost dozing and you're more easily awakened. And what I also found interesting is birds do this as well. So birds have been shown to undergo REM to quiet sleep cycles, this ultradian rhythm, and so have some reptiles as well. And they were saying that they class them as amniotes, which I hadn't heard before. And an amniote is a sort of animal which has the specific type of embryo which we have, which is shared between reptile, birds, and mammals. And all of these undergo these changes in the sleep cycle. So it kind of led to this suggestion of, if we're seeing this state which we're seeing in humans, is it enough to be able to suggest that they are undergoing a REM sleep? And the question is, do octopuses dream? It should be said that our closest common ancestor, so between vertebrates and cephalopods, was over 500 million years ago, which was I think it was a flatworm, was our most recent common ancestor. So it was at that point where our two lineages diverged and they kind of went on their own evolutionary route, where we went on our own. And the evolution of sleep appears to be quite a selective pressure, because if octopuses are undergoing it as well as humans, and Drosophila, which is this fruit fly, they also undergo this active sleep as well, and they're on a different kind of evolutionary branch of the tree to we are. It suggests that, or it kind of tells us more about the fact that sleep is important evolutionary.
I did want to ask, actually, while I have the floor, I suppose, while I've taken it, how do they measure, or how do they confirm that it's kind of reacting and it's not just, if you prod someone if they're asleep, they kind of, or you I don't know, you're at sleepover and you shout something. Some people, they react. People can react, but they're not consciously reacting. They're just reacting. How do they confirm that they've actually woken up?
They were trying to prove that it was asleep rather than trying to prove that it was awake, really.
Yeah.
So the fact that it responded slower when they thought it was asleep does kind of
confirm it.
Support that it was actually asleep.
That's true.
It wasn't just sat still, but wide awake.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is, yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting what you're saying about the last common ancestor we have with them. Like, it makes you wonder if sleep, like if that little flatworm thing that we both evolved from, if that also went through sleep, or if sleep is something that is developed like independently, twice, once in vertebrates and once in invertebrates.
I find that really interesting because in this book, I think it's called Octopus Mind, or something like that. It basically goes into the divergence of human and octopus. I'm going to say neuron system, because it's more than just the brain. It's decentralized brain, basically. And it talks about it being different.
It's not divergence. It's not divergence. It's convergence. Convergent evolution, which you don't hear about that too much in evolution. But that's when two things have evolved independently to kind of reach the same endpoint, rather than one thing kind of starting out and then diverging away into two substantially different endpoints. Which when you see convergence evolution, it kind of suggests that this is the best thing nature can create, because it's created itself in two independent sorts, which is just something really interesting to say. Sorry, I interrupted you halfway through your. But Jack, what you were saying, so it's not just the fact that both of us sleep. So sleep is witnessed in many different animals. So the distinguishment here is the fact that it's these cycles of sleep. So the fact that they go between REM sleep or REM looking sleep, which is actually called active sleep, and kind of a light sleep, and it's this ultradian rhythm, as I mentioned, non-REM.
No, it is NREM.
It's called that's true. In humans, it's called NREM. In animal studies, it's called quiet sleep, because I think you can't just say if it's following what humans are doing, it's like human sleep. We can't quite do that. Because mollusks, which are kind of what cephalopods then descended from, I think they are they classed as a mollusk,
yeah,
or are they a descendant of? So yeah, other mollusks then, or more or related mollusk species, they sleep, but they don't undergo active sleep. They're only in this one sleep state. So therefore, if you kind of do the same experiments with them, I think you'd find that they were kind of responding. It took the same time to respond to the stimulus in all of their sleep cycle, whereas for cephalopods, you can see that there was a distinguishment between the time taken to respond to the stimulus, which is suggesting this REM sleep, and they're also kind of presenting these different behaviors while under this REM sleep as well. And it's if I shall add the paper to the show notes, which I think we should all, as a side note, I think we should all send whatever we're reading in, and I should start adding those the descriptions. But yeah, take a look, because if you're interested, it's a very fascinating thing to observe.
I just had two thoughts when you're saying that. They get more vulnerable because they respond slower, right, compared to their cuttlefish. But they also have a period of time where they can evolve, or where they can think about something and kind of have that kind of development, the higher level thought, which is really cool.
It's potential they could be processing thoughts and things in this sleep as humans do, because they think that REM sleep is really good for kind of collecting your thoughts together, and that's why they sometimes say sleep on it, because it kind of reorders your memories and your actions that day into potentially a more understandable kind of sequence, which you can then go on for, well, use to, and rattle on a bit here, use to understand something a bit more later on down the line.
The stuff I was looking at was very similar to your topic, Ed. It was all about the nervous system that octopuses have, because, like you said, they evolved their nervous system almost completely separate to us. I think that little flatworm ancestor that we had like a very basic nervous system, but nothing as complex as theirs or ours nowadays. And it's resulted in them having like this really weirdly structured nervous system. So, for example, in humans, 99% of our neurons are in the brain. Like everything is controlled by the brain. But little stop code on. What would you say the ratio in their nervous system is, brain to like other neurons? So in their brain versus the rest of their body, what would you say the ratio is?
Ooh. Do we know what it is in humans? Oh, sorry, 99%. You said.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Let's go for.
I'm saying 40.
70.
So Dids wins on that one. Very close. It's 33.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 33% in the brain, and the vast majority of it is actually in the rest of their body, in their tentacles, well, in their arms, sorry, and the rest of their body. Yeah.
So how would you? I was trying to get my head around this. How would you kind of relate that? So if we were 38% brain outside of our actual brain, sorry, 30% of neurons outside of the brain, how would that look like on us? How would we feel if that was the
More
case?
cognitive control.
Well, essentially, the way it works with them is each arm has its own like processing center, basically. So each arm can, to a certain extent, sort of think for itself, and control its own movement. And so, yeah, essentially, they outsource a lot of their information processing to their arms, whereas we do all of our thoughts in our brain. Like every movement we do is coordinated by the brain, whereas with them, if it's like
apart from reflex action,
if it's a simple thing. Yes, yeah, knee-jerk reactions and stuff like that are pretty much the only time that information doesn't have to go via the brain in humans.
And that goes via the central nervous system, doesn't it? It goes to the spinal cord, and then your spinal cord can kind of understands not the right
reflex
word.
loop.
It has the reflex built in, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it, isn't it? Sorry, the reflex loop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like your knee is able to just communicate. Well, no, yeah, you're right. It goes to your spine. Your spine does some like very basic processing of that information, then it sends it back down your leg to make you do a knee jerk. With octopuses, they're like way more complex, because obviously, like you said, they've got all those taste receptors in their legs.
So how much actual
all the camouflage?
How that's kind of answered the question before I've even asked it. How much like actual cognitive power do they have? Like what's the level of decision making that they can make? Obviously, you just said camouflage. That's pretty big.
Well, yeah. So with the camouflage, and to a certain extent with the movement of their arms, a lot of that is just sort of instinct driven. It doesn't really, it's like us. Like moving your arm doesn't require the same level of thought as contemplating your own existence or anything like that. But it all goes through the same organ in humans, whereas in octopuses, if it's a fairly basic thing like moving or tasting or something like that, they just sort it out locally. They don't bother sending all that information all the way to the brain, process it there, send it all the way back. They just deal with it locally.
Got you.
And actually what they can do as well is say one arm needs to communicate with another arm. It still doesn't have to go through the brain. The arms can actually communicate with each other without having to go via the brain.
So how
so
does
it's
that
really
work?
only
is that physical?
Yeah, it's just the way that their nervous system is laid out. It doesn't all loop back through the brain. It's sort of structured in a sort of triangle, I guess,
So
between
it'll go back to like the central
all the
body
different arms.
and then come out to the other arm.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they're all sort of like linked up in a network, but it's not forced to go all back through the same place like our one is.
Because it takes a shortcut.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When you said that, I thought you meant like two hands would be talking to each other. And I was that is
Or like puppets.
yeah. But like chemically or something.
Well, I guess chemically it is because it's going through the nervous system instead of like talking through the air.
I mean,
it's going through.
It's not a silly statement. Like plants can communicate chemically with their neighbors. They release like hormones to talk when there's predators nearby and whatever. And it can lead to thickening of stems and production of thorns and whatnot.
That's true.
So,
well, that's why giraffes eat upwind.
What?
Because downwind, sorry. The giraffes eat downwind of the trees because they release these chemicals which will cause the next tree to kind of go quite rancid and like kind of taste, I think, quite acidic. So it will then release its kind of protection mechanisms, one of which is making kind of a bit more disgusting to taste. So giraffes, I think they consciously do it. They will eat downwind so that the chemicals aren't being able to get to like the trees which are further up.
That's so cool.
Which is cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, I would like to hear slightly more about
smart
this
boys.
octopus brain.
Well, I can go on more about giraffes if you want to talk.
Episode 6.
I'm quite liking the giraffe segue as well, to be fair. I saw another experiment as well, which it's similar to that, but it also links up with their camouflage. So apparently their arms also have photoreceptors in them, so to a certain extent they can sense the light around them to sort of inform their camouflage response. And again, they did a thing where they chopped the arm off, put it in like a different color environment to the one they'd just taken it from, and yeah, the arm would turn the color of the environment, even though it's no longer connected to any eyes, and the eyes were in like a separate tank.
So that's that.
Well,
almost evidence for the point that I made earlier about like tasting the color almost, or tasting the surface that they're on, because there's no way that the eye can see that.
That's incredible. And apparently, octopuses are colorblind as well. They can't see. I think they only see in grey. It's not even colorblind. They just don't have.
I heard that actually.
Color
receptors. But they would be colorblind.
How'd you hear that? It would be colorblind. So they can, kind of sense they sense their environment without seeing it through the eyes, which means that they're turning into these colors which they can't even perceive themselves. Well, they must be able to perceive them because they're turning into them, but which their eyes can't process. Which is,
I think I read somewhere that it was these photoreceptors in the skin that maybe inform the color. Because I don't think their eyes can necessarily.
Which I guess that then is seeing color, isn't it? Because if the photoreceptors can sense the colors, then.
But I don't think it gets. It's not like it would form the mental image that's being formed in their brains. You get what I mean? Like, I don't think they're seeing through their arms. I think it's, if anything, it would be almost like they could smell the colors or taste the colors.
Yeah, but that's how we perceive color.
Like,
it's like how bats can see with sonar. Like you would kind of hear that it's over there. It forms like maybe a mental picture. That's how we kind of break it down to understand it, because we're visual creatures. So I guess like they would, but they wouldn't see the color. But color to them might be a completely different abstract. Just what's it called? I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's just abstract concept. That's what I'm trying to think of. It's not seeing it. It's like it would have a different property to them. And that's really interesting.
That is really cool. Well, we're talking about legs. We should mention octopuses have 8 legs.
No, I read it was arms.
I'm only joking. Yeah, it's arms. What I was going to say is that octopus, one of the arms of the octopus is their reproductive arm, which has the name. Do you guys remember what it's called?
No.
And it's not a penis.
Willy.
Spalm.
It is the
spalm.
Give me two secs.
It's nuts.
The spalm. Heterocotylus. There we go. And this has their sperm I think it's in sacs within
Yeah.
the within this arm. The heterocyclus. I'm not going to say it again. And they during reproduction during reproduction some octopuses will just kind of break off this arm and give it to the female, which she then just stores in her mantle for later use. And then when she decides to take it, she can use it then to reproduce with. But as soon as the male, or not as soon as the male, after the male does this, there's then just a short. They've only got like a short time left to live. I was just thinking, imagine if you like kind of gave your sperm arm to your significant, not a significant other, to a female, and then she just like stores him, like, yeah, cheers, mate, and then just like kind of throws it away when you're not looking.
For a rainy day, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just put this in my mantle. See you later. Cheers for the shells.
What a loser.
It's interesting you say that about the males dying soon after, though, because I've read a similar thing about the females where they don't age that quickly. You know how you're saying they only live like a couple of years, really?
Yeah.
Apparently they don't really age that much until they give birth's the wrong word. Until they lay their eggs, I guess. And only then do their cells actually start aging.
Wow.
Ah, really?
Yeah, they found that if you either make them infertile or just keep them separate from any males so that they can't mate, they live like 5 or 6 years compared to 2.
Do they degenerate in the same way that we think we do with telomeres shortening?
I think it's more. Well, they haven't investigated fully, but by the sounds of it, it's sort of like once they've laid their eggs, their bodies kind of know that they're done with evolutionarily. So like they just sort of tell the body to start like shutting down, and all the cells become sort of aged, but
I guess
very, very prematurely.
If they're not teaching their offspring, then that makes sense because they've done their life's work, haven't they?
Yeah. Essentially, what they do is they stay in their dens protecting the eggs until they hatch, and just getting weaker and weaker and sort of older and saggier.
They don't go out and feed, do they? Which is weird.
No.
And that can take, what is it? The gestation period is months. It's quite a few months, 5 months. So yeah, the gestation period can be up to 5 months of just withering, waiting for your eggs. And it's 100,000. I've got written it. 100,000 to 500,000 eggs can be laid.
And yet they only bank on one reproductive cycle. They don't try and go for another term. Like a lot of animals, season, they go like once a year or once every 2 years, or whatever. They're just going to do it once and that's it.
I guess 100,000 eggs at least is like a large metabolic cost to produce all your eggs in one basket, quite literally.
But they could just do like 1,000 and then try again next year or something.
Do we have anything more we want to say? Because time's up on Jackie as well.
Just that they're bloody awesome. Can't wait for number 10 when we get back into them.
Yeah, so for those listeners out there, write in if you want to see this in episode 10. That'd be great. If you don't, still write in, but we won't listen to it because we are going to do this as at least one more episode, maybe even a continual feature every Wood anniversary. Every 5 years. Not 5 years. Every fifth episode, we might do an episode on cephalopods, which is a little teaser. So you're gonna have to stay tuned. Obviously, listen between then because they will still do interesting stories. But there's more of this to come.
Maybe they'll be ceph related. Maybe.
To finally end things, I'll give you a question or maybe even a joke. Why can't an octopus get a vaccine?
Ooh.
Because it's got too many arms.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Can't decide on what arm to get it
in. It's not a joke. We don't do jokes on this podcast. It's because they do not have an acquired immune system. They can't form antibody-producing cells. This is all science, guys.
People got fun.
Unlucky. Tune into the funny files if you want some jokes. This is the Biofiles, baby.
Good night.
Anyway, on that note, thank you very much, Jack and Dids. We are the Biofiles. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes. I don't think we're on Deezer, but I don't think anyone uses Deezer anymore. I don't think anyone ever did use Deezer actually. And I think most places you can find your podcasts. Audible, we might not be on Audible, but anyway, YouTube. We're on YouTube as well. And we also do have a website, which is www.thebiofiles.co.uk, which I've spent hours tirelessly curating, so please check that out. And you can also email us at thebiofiles2022@gmail.com, I think. That might be the right email address. Try it, and if it bounces back, I'll get back to you next week. And so, thank you very much, Dids, and thank you very much, Jack, and we shall catch you for episode 6, which won't be on cephalopods, but will be on something both biological and interesting as ever. So thank you very much, and see you next time.